The meeting that could save an empire was falling apart before it even began. Amelia Grant, CEO of Horizon Technologies, was losing everything: her billion-dollar merger, her reputation, her control. And all it took was one crashing call, one missing interpreter, and one man she'd spent 3 years ignoring. The only person who could save her empire was the man she'd called just the driver. "Why does everything fail when I need it the most?" Amelia hissed, slamming her phone on the leather seat of her sleek Bentley. Her voice shook, not from weakness but from rage. The translation line had dropped again, and her Japanese counterparts were landing in less than 2 hours. A billion-dollar deal, years of work, was dying one broken call at a time. In the front seat, Daniel Brooks, her driver, reached quietly toward the console. "Ma'am, maybe I can—" "Don't," Amelia snapped. "Don't touch my things." The words cut through the air like glass. "Keep your hands where they belong, Daniel. You drive, I talk. That's the arrangement." Daniel froze mid-motion, his hand still hovering above the radio, his jaw clenched. But he said nothing. He'd spent years perfecting silence. As the car glided through the rain-soaked streets of Manhattan, Amelia's voice rose again. "I can't find a single interpreter." "Do you realize this, Richard?" "Not one." She was shouting into her phone, every word trembling with panic. "Yes, I don't care what it costs. Get me someone who speaks Japanese, Mandarin, anything. The board is breathing down my neck." Daniel's eyes flicked briefly to the rearview mirror. Her perfect bun was unraveling, mascara streaking down her cheek. To the world, Amelia Grant was a symbol of untouchable success, polished, brilliant, relentless. But now she looked human, desperate, cornered. He'd seen this look before, in diplomats, generals, presidents. People who thought power made them invincible until life reminded them otherwise. But Amelia didn't know that Daniel wasn't really a driver. Not long ago, he'd been a top-tier linguistic strategist for the U.S. Department of Foreign Affairs. 9 languages, 22 years. Then one downsizing bill had erased everything. Now he drove the woman who called him help. Amelia's voice cracked again. "This merger is the only thing keeping Horizon alive. If this falls through, we're finished. Do you understand, Richard?" "Finished!" Daniel said nothing. But in his mind, he could already hear the coded panic behind her words. He'd heard similar tones during peace treaties and hostage negotiations. The voice of someone who couldn't afford failure. A moment later, her final call went to voicemail. The silence that followed felt heavier than the storm outside. Her shoulders sagged. For the first time, Amelia Grant looked defeated. That was when Daniel made a choice he hadn't made in 3 years. He lowered the partition. "Ms. Grant," he said quietly. Amelia's head whipped around. "I told you to keep that up. What languages do you need?" The question hit her like a foreign sound. She blinked. "Excuse me?" "For your meeting," Daniel said, his tone calm and professional. "You said Japanese and Mandarin. Anyone else on the call speaking Korean or Hindi?" Her jaw slackened. "That's not your concern." "Actually," Daniel said softly, "it might be." Amelia frowned. "You're my driver, not my—" "I speak those languages," he interrupted. "And 6 more." The air turned electric. "What?" she whispered. Daniel met her eyes in the mirror. "I speak Japanese, Mandarin, Hindi, Korean, Arabic, Portuguese, French, German, and Spanish. Would you like me to demonstrate?" Her mouth opened, then closed again. She stared at him like he'd just confessed to being an astronaut. Before she could respond, her phone rang. Caller ID, Nakamura Khan Holdings. Her blood ran cold. She looked at the phone, then at Daniel. I don't have— "May I?" he asked simply, extending his hand. For a long moment, her pride fought her desperation. Then she handed him the phone. Daniel answered in perfect, fluid Japanese. "Moshi moshi, Nakamura-san. Watashi wa Grant-sama no daihyo desu." The transformation was instant. Gone was the quiet, careful tone of a driver. His voice now carried authority, respect, and the kind of confidence that only comes from mastery. Amelia could only watch as Daniel conducted a flawless conversation in rapid Japanese, switching seamlessly into Mandarin when another executive joined the call. He discussed licensing clauses, intellectual property frameworks, and market projections as if he'd written them himself. When the call ended 20 minutes later, Daniel handed the phone back to her. "They're looking forward to finalizing the meeting this afternoon," he said. The misunderstanding has been cleared. Amelia stared at him, stunned. Who are you? Daniel smiled faintly. Someone who needed a job 3 years ago. And someone who still believes in second chances. The car rolled silently into Horizon Tower's underground garage. For the first time, Amelia looked at him not as an employee, but as a mystery she didn't understand. Daniel, she said quietly, I need to know everything. Amelia stood frozen in the garage, the words, I need to know everything, still trembling in the air. Daniel met her eyes through the reflection of the rearview mirror. His voice was calm but carried the weight of decades. I used to work for the Department of Foreign Affairs, he said. Before that, I was a diplomatic translator at the United Nations. My job was to make sure powerful people didn't destroy each other over language they didn't understand. She stared at him, trying to process what she was hearing. And now you're driving cars? Daniel smiled faintly, not with bitterness but acceptance. Budget cuts don't care about resumes. My department was dissolved. I had 2 weeks to find income. My mother's medical bills, my son's college tuition. They couldn't wait. The elevator to the executive floors opened with a chime. Amelia's heart thudded as she followed him inside. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was heavy with questions she didn't dare ask. As the elevator rose, Daniel continued, his tone quiet but certain. I applied to hundreds of positions. Overqualified, too old, too specialized, they all said the same thing. But when Horizon posted an opening for a driver, I stopped hesitating. Work is work. Dignity isn't defined by a title. Amelia felt a sting of shame that ran deeper than she expected. She remembered every dismissive glance, every order barked from the back seat. I didn't know, she whispered. You didn't ask, Daniel replied softly. The elevator stopped. Neither moved. The ding echoed like a judgment between them. Finally, Daniel said, You have a meeting in 40 minutes. We can still save this merger. Amelia swallowed hard and nodded. Tell me what to do. Daniel's eyes softened. You don't need to do everything. Just listen this time. When they stepped onto the executive floor, chaos was already erupting. Assistants darted through the corridor, phones rang nonstop, and the smell of burnt coffee clung to panic. Ms. Grant, her assistant Lena called out breathless. The Nakamura-Kan delegation is already on their way. They're asking for cultural protocol briefings, and no one knows what that means. Amelia turned to Daniel. He was already jotting something in his notepad. Names, dates, linguistic notes. His movements were sharp, deliberate, like a general drawing battle lines. Tell them, Amelia said firmly. We're finalizing final preparations. Out of respect for their customs. Lena blinked. And who is this? Daniel didn't miss a beat. Daniel Brooks, Senior Liaison for International Negotiations. The words landed like thunder. Amelia didn't flinch. He'll be handling all communications from this point forward. But ma'am, he's exactly who we need, Amelia cut in. Lena hesitated but obeyed, disappearing down the corridor. When the door to the executive conference room closed, Amelia turned to Daniel. You really think you can handle this? Daniel's lips curved. Ms. Grant, I once prevented 2 countries from declaring war over translation errors. I think I can manage a business meeting. For a fleeting moment, Amelia almost smiled. 15 minutes later, Daniel returned wearing a navy suit borrowed from the executive shop downstairs. The transformation was staggering. Gone was the quiet driver. In his place stood a man of effortless authority. His posture was straight, his gaze steady, his presence commanding. Amelia looked at him with something close to awe. You look different. I finally look like myself, Daniel said simply. They entered the conference room together. The delegation from Nakamura-Kan Holdings stood, bowing in polite greeting. Daniel returned the bow with flawless precision, speaking in formal Japanese. The shift in the room was immediate. The executives relaxed, smiles replacing tension. Amelia felt her pulse slow for the first time all day. What did you say? She whispered. That Horizon Technologies is honored by their presence and grateful for the opportunity to learn from their legacy, Daniel replied. The meeting began. Daniel navigated seamlessly between Japanese, Mandarin, and English. He didn't just translate words, he translated worlds. When a technical dispute arose, he calmed it with gentle respect. When a misunderstanding surfaced, he dissolved it before anyone noticed. Amelia watched him in silent astonishment. The man who once opened her car door was now steering the future of her company. But even brilliance couldn't shield them from prejudice. When the first meeting ended, several Horizon executives pulled Amelia aside. "Amelia," said Tom Harris, her vice president, "who exactly is this man? Where did you find him?" "He's been with the company for 3 years. In what capacity?" Tom pressed. Amelia hesitated. "Operations." Tom frowned. "Operations? Amelia, this is a billion-dollar deal. We can't risk everything on someone who doesn't belong in the room." Daniel approached, overhearing just enough. His expression didn't change. "Mr. Harris," he said politely, "would you like me to explain the proper seating protocol for tomorrow's negotiation?" Tom raised an eyebrow. "You think you know more about Japanese business customs than our cultural consultants?" Daniel's reply was steady. The Nakamura family business was founded in 1951, not long after Japan's Reconstruction period. Their senior executive expects gifts that acknowledge resilience, not wealth. Expensive items would be an insult. Did your consultants mention that? Silence. Tom swallowed. "No," Daniel continued. "Ms. Khan, on the other hand, values efficiency. Over-formality will frustrate her. The goal tomorrow is balance, honor for one, precision for the other." The room was still. Even Amelia found herself speechless. "How do you know this?" Tom asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Daniel looked him in the eye. "Because I helped design those diplomatic frameworks in 2019. The truth fell like a stone into water, spreading ripples of disbelief." Amelia crossed her arms, voice steady. "Any other questions about his qualifications?" None came. When the others left, Amelia lingered. "You could have embarrassed them," she said softly. "I didn't need to," Daniel replied. "They embarrassed themselves." He returned to his desk that night while everyone else went home. When Amelia passed by his office hours later, she found him surrounded by folders and notes, each labeled meticulously, color-coded, precise. "You haven't gone home?" she asked. "Almost finished," he said, scanning a page written entirely in Mandarin. "I'm reviewing each patent one more time." Preparation prevents humiliation. Amelia stepped closer, noticing the depth of his work. Profiles of executives, annotated translations, cultural notes, even gift suggestions tailored to personal histories. "Daniel, this is extraordinary." He looked up, eyes calm but tired. "If you fail to understand people, you lose them. It's true in politics. It's true in business." Her phone buzzed. "Unknown international number." She hesitated. Daniel reached out. "Let me," he answered in fluent German. 10 minutes later, he hung up and smiled faintly. "Berlin wants to reopen their negotiations. They said they heard about how you handled Nakamura Khan." Amelia blinked. "That deal was worth $40 million. "It still is," Daniel said. She sat down, speechless. "How many opportunities have we lost because no one understood the language?" Daniel's tone was gentle but firm. "More than you can count. But tomorrow you start fixing it." She nodded slowly. "Tomorrow, then." He handed her a briefing folder. "Everything you need to know about everyone in that room. Their culture. Their fears. Their decision patterns. Read it. Live it." Amelia opened it and froze. Every page was insight, precision, empathy. "The kind of preparation you couldn't fake, Daniel," she whispered. "Who are you really?" He smiled. "Someone who refuses to stay invisible." That night, Amelia didn't sleep. She spent hours reading his notes, learning every name, every gesture, every mistake her company had made. By dawn, she realized something terrifying. If Daniel hadn't spoken up, Horizon would have been gone within weeks, and yet tomorrow, everything could still fall apart. She just didn't know that the next meeting wouldn't only decide the company's future, it would expose every hidden truth about Daniel Brooks, and about herself. Morning light cut through the skyline like fire on glass as Amelia walked into Horizon Tower. The city below buzzed, unaware that in a few hours, her company might cease to exist. She'd barely slept, her mind replaying Daniel's calm confidence, his voice shifting through languages like silk. Her board was waiting. Every seat around the long walnut table was filled. The faces that once looked at her with loyalty now held fear. Fear of collapse, fear of change, fear of being replaced. Amelia took her seat at the head of the table. "Before we begin," she said, "I need to introduce someone." Daniel entered behind her. Suit pressed, expression measured, the kind of stillness that came from decades in high-stakes rooms. This is Daniel Brooks, Amelia continued. He will be overseeing all international communication for today's negotiation. The murmurs began instantly. Tom Harris leaned forward, his voice low but sharp. Amelia, with respect, where's the professional service we hired? Unavailable, she replied simply. Tom frowned. Then postpone. We can't. Daniel will handle it. A scoff broke the silence. With what credentials? Daniel stood quietly, unbothered. Would you prefer a list or a demonstration? Tom folded his arms. Start with the list. Daniel took a slow breath. PhD in International Relations from Georgetown. Master's in Applied Linguistics from Cambridge. 22 years with the Department of Foreign Affairs. Lead negotiator for the Pacific Trade Council and cultural strategist for 3 administrations. The room went completely still. Tom opened his mouth, but Daniel wasn't finished. I also designed the cultural negotiation model currently used by the Asian Economic Council. The same one this merger is based on. Someone at the far end muttered, You're joking. Daniel's tone didn't waver. I don't joke about billion-dollar agreements. For a moment, no one dared breathe. Amelia leaned back in her chair, watching the ripple of realization spread through the people who had doubted him. Any other questions? She asked softly. No one spoke. Then Daniel said, If I may, I'd like to brief the team on our protocol for today. They nodded, wordless now. He began pacing slowly like a professor in command of his lecture. Mr. Nakamura's company will test us on respect before business. They'll measure our tone, our posture, even the order we enter the room. To them, a handshake lasts longer than a contract. As for Ms. Khan, her focus is precision, punctuality, proof that we value efficiency as much as they do. One wrong gesture could undo months of work. As he spoke, pen scratched frantically across paper. Every word carried weight. Then he looked at Amelia. You'll open with gratitude, not authority. Humility earns trust faster than power. She nodded slowly, feeling the truth in every syllable. When the briefing ended, the executives filed out, subdued and thoughtful. Only Amelia remained. You didn't have to put them in their place, she said. Daniel smiled faintly. They'll respect you more once they see the results. Respect you, you mean? He shook his head. They'll forget my name by next week. You're the one who signs the papers. I'm just giving you a voice that crosses borders. Amelia didn't answer. For the first time in years, she felt small, but in a way that was humbling, not humiliating. That night, she found him in the office again, still working. The floor was empty except for Daniel, surrounded by files, maps, printouts, and open laptops glowing in 3 languages. You should rest, she said. He didn't look up. I'm almost done. What are you reviewing now? Cultural profiles. Do you know Mr. Nakamura's father was part of Japan's post-war rebuilding council? He values honor above profit. If he senses arrogance, he'll end the deal. As for Ms. Khan, she built her company from nothing after her father's death. She doesn't want sympathy, she wants competence. They're both fighting legacies. So are you. Amelia folded her arms. And what about you, Daniel? What are you fighting for? He paused, pen still hovering over the page. I have a son in college. He thinks I'm still consulting overseas. Every month I tell him the check is from a research grant. She felt something twist in her chest. You've been hiding this for years? Daniel nodded. Pride doesn't pay tuition. For a long time, neither spoke. Only the soft hum of the city lights filled the space. Then her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She hesitated, glancing at Daniel. He reached for it gently. Let me handle it. A few seconds later, fluent German filled the room. Amelia couldn't follow the words, but she recognized the tone. Diplomatic, warm, persuasive. When he ended the call, his smile was almost triumphant. That was your Berlin partners, he said. They want back in. They're sending revised terms tomorrow. Amelia sank into a chair, stunned. That's another 40 million recovered in a single night. Daniel shrugged. It's amazing what listening can do. She stared at him for a long moment. I don't think I've ever met anyone like you. You have, he said quietly. You just never saw them. Her breath caught. He handed her a thick folder. Everything's ready. Tomorrow we win or we disappear. Either way, you'll walk out knowing exactly who stood beside you. She looked down at the folder, then up at him. Thank you. Daniel met her gaze. Don't thank me yet. Tomorrow is where everything starts. The next morning, the conference room shimmered with nerves and anticipation. Executives whispered, papers shuffled. The city's skyline glowed behind them like 1,000 judging eyes. Amelia adjusted her jacket, hands trembling slightly. Daniel stood beside her, steady, unflinching, a man carved from calm. "Ready?" she asked. "As I'll ever be," he said. The doors opened and the delegation entered. The air seemed to change temperature. Mr. Nakamura bowed, Ms. Khan nodded curtly, and the translator at their side prepared her equipment. But Daniel stepped forward first. He bowed in perfect Japanese form, voice smooth as he spoke. The translator froze, listening, then quietly set her headset down. Mr. Nakamura's expression softened into surprise and then pleasure. Amelia whispered, "What did you say?" "That Horizon Technologies is honored by their presence and that we hope our partnership brings prosperity to both families," Daniel murmured back. She smiled. Perfect, and for a brief, impossible moment, Amelia believed everything might finally turn in their favor. But she was wrong, because just as Daniel began the first translation, Ms. Khan's assistant leaned toward her and whispered something in Hindi that made her expression darken like a gathering storm. "Stop," Ms. Khan said abruptly. "There's been a problem." The room froze. Amelia's throat tightened. "What kind of problem?" Ms. Khan's eyes were cold. "Your Mumbai office has failed to secure its data protection. There's been a breach." Her words sliced through the air, and suddenly the billion-dollar dream started to crumble again. A silence fell so deep it seemed the air itself stopped breathing. The clicking of a pen at the end of the table was the only sound. Amelia's heart was pounding in her chest, every thud echoing with the same thought. Not again. Ms. Khan's words rang with finality. "We cannot risk joining with a partner whose internal data security is compromised. If Horizon can't protect its own algorithms, how can it protect ours?" Amelia's throat was dry. "That's impossible. We have one of the strongest infrastructures in the—" Ms. Khan raised a hand, cutting her off. "Your branch in Mumbai confirmed unauthorized access to AI frameworks last night." Every face turned toward Amelia. She could feel the sweat gathering at her temples, the heat rising beneath her skin. One wrong word and the entire company would collapse in front of her eyes. Then Daniel spoke. "Ms. Khan, may I ask what specific evidence your office received?" The assistant beside Ms. Khan whispered something rapidly in Hindi. Daniel listened closely, nodding once. He switched languages with effortless grace. "Madam, I believe I can clarify. The breach you're referring to was intercepted, not executed." Ms. Khan frowned. "Intercepted?" "Yes," Daniel replied. "Your regional director, Mr. Arun Patel, contacted me last night. He suspected an intrusion attempt and we worked together to isolate the threat. The intruder never accessed any protected data. In fact, your systems and ours responded exactly as designed, cooperatively." "You worked with my director?" Ms. Khan asked, incredulous. "In Hindi," Daniel said, switching tongues again with soft authority. "We agreed to report success once both parties confirmed containment. I told him you would appreciate hearing the details from me personally." He turned back to English. "Would you like me to connect him right now for confirmation?" The assistant was already on his phone. Moments later, Patel's voice filled the speaker, brisk but calm. "Yes, madam, Daniel Brooks and I resolved the issue. No data lost. The system's integrity is intact." When the call ended, the room exhaled in unison. Ms. Khan's severe expression softened for the first time. "You speak Hindi fluently?" Daniel inclined his head. "Along with 8 others. It comes in handy." Nakamura chuckled under his breath, the first sound of amusement that morning. Impressive. The atmosphere shifted. Where there had been suspicion, now there was curiosity. Daniel used that moment like a conductor with an orchestra. "This incident proves how ready Horizon is. Instead of hiding the problem, our global teams worked across continents and languages to protect both our companies. That, Ms. Khan, is what partnership looks like." The words hung like a flag in still air, steady, defiant, proud. Ms. Khan nodded slowly. "You make a persuasive case, Mr. Brooks." But before the tension could dissolve completely, Mr. Nakamura spoke in deliberate Japanese, his tone thoughtful and grave. Daniel turned toward him, listening intently. When he translated, his voice was low but clear. "Mr. Nakamura is asking whether Horizon truly understands the depth of a long-term alliance. He says short-term profit means nothing without shared honor. Amelia looked at Daniel, panic flickering behind her eyes. This was the test he'd warned her about. Daniel bowed slightly and answered in Japanese. His voice carried warmth and gravity, every syllable measured. As he spoke, the old man's eyes widened, then softened, his posture easing. Amelia whispered, "What did you say?" "I told him," Daniel said, "about my father, a man who spent his life rebuilding trust where there was none. I said partnerships that survive generations are built not on signatures but on mutual respect." Mr. Nakamura's eyes glistened. He responded in Japanese, slower this time, his tone reverent. "He says," Daniel translated, "that your father must have been a wise man, and that he believes Horizon might understand honor after all." The pressure in Amelia's chest loosened just enough for her to breathe. But before relief could take root, the third voice at the table, Horizon's own technical director Liang Chen, spoke suddenly in Mandarin, urgency cutting through his words. Daniel's head turned sharply, listening. He frowned. "What is it?" Amelia asked. "Mr. Chen says he's identified a potential patent overlap between our AI model and an existing Chinese framework owned by BYU Systems. If true, it could void the merger entirely." Ms. Khan's expression hardened again. Mr. Nakamura folded his hands, silent but watchful. Daniel asked for the tablet, his voice calm despite the storm brewing. He and Mr. Chen began speaking rapidly in Mandarin, technical terminology flowing between them like electricity. Everyone else could only stare, lost in the speed of their exchange. Finally, Daniel looked up. "This isn't infringement," he said firmly. "The BYU model uses convolutional architecture. Ours is built on transformer-based design. They may look similar at the surface, but structurally, they're worlds apart." He pulled up diagrams pointing to comparative code lines with surgical precision. "Our neural sequence differs at the core. The resemblance is visual, not legal." Mr. Chen studied the screen, his eyes narrowing, and then he nodded, smiling for the first time in weeks. He said something in Mandarin that made Daniel laugh softly. "What did he say?" Amelia asked. "He said I should have been a programmer," Daniel replied. The tension broke like glass under sunlight. Even Ms. Khan allowed herself a small smile. By the end of the meeting, what had begun as collapse now felt like rebirth. Mr. Nakamura stood first, speaking English now, his accent deliberate but warm. "Today, Horizon has proven not only skill but heart. I believe we can proceed." The room went silent as Ms. Khan extended her hand across the table. 50-50 partnership effective immediately." Amelia's fingers shook as she grasped it. Daniel translated the formal confirmation in 3 languages, his voice unwavering until the very last syllable. And then, it was done. Applause rose, quiet at first, then growing, the sound of survival itself. But the most unexpected moment came when Mr. Nakamura approached Daniel directly. The old man bowed deeply, a gesture so rare it silenced the room again. "You have given us trust, Mr. Brooks," he said slowly. "This is the most valuable gift in business." Daniel returned the bow with equal depth. "Thank you, sir. I only gave what was already deserved." Ms. Khan stepped forward, handing Daniel her card with both hands. "You're the finest interpreter I've ever seen," she said softly. "If you ever wish to consult for my company in Mumbai, my door will always be open." Daniel smiled. "I already have a company to serve." The laughter that followed wasn't just relief, it was renewal. Yet even as the celebration swelled, Amelia watched him with quiet wonder. The man she'd dismissed for years had just saved everything she'd built. She whispered, "Daniel, what do I even say to you?" He looked at her, calm and steady as ever. "You could start with thank you. Or," he added with a half smile, "by calling me something other than driver." She laughed softly, the sound breaking through months of fear. "Thank you, Mr. Brooks." Outside the window, the city lights came alive, and for the first time in years, Amelia felt hope burn brighter than ambition. But the day wasn't over yet. The ink on the merger was still drying, and the board, those same people who once questioned her choices, were waiting. And this time, Daniel Brooks wasn't walking into that room as a driver. He was walking in as the man who had just rewritten Horizon's future. The boardroom doors swung open again. The same people who had doubted Daniel 12 hours earlier now rose to their feet when he entered beside Amelia. The air inside the room was different now, sharper, reverent, alive with the knowledge that they'd just witnessed something historic. Amelia set her papers down at the head of the table. "Before we discuss next steps, there's something I need to say," she began, her voice steady but carrying a tremor of emotion. "Yesterday, many of you questioned Daniel's presence here. You wanted proof of his credibility, so I spent the night finding it." She connected her laptop to the projector. The first document appeared on the screen, a government letterhead embossed with the United States seal. "Diplomatic commendation," she said, "for preventing the collapse of the 2018 Pacific Trade Agreement. Signed by the Secretary of State," another slide. "Here, lead negotiator for the Asian-Pacific Economic Accord, which forms the backbone of our entire business model. And this," she clicked again, "a personal recommendation from Prime Minister Takahashi of Japan." A stunned silence gripped the room. Amelia's voice grew stronger. "For 3 years, we had one of the most accomplished diplomatic strategists in the world working for us. And we didn't even look at him." Her gaze swept across the table. "That ends today." She turned to Daniel. "From this moment forward, Daniel Brooks is promoted to Senior Vice President of Global Relations, effective immediately. Salary, $280,000 annually, plus equity." Gasps. Daniel's composure faltered for the first time. "Amelia, that's not necessary." "It is," she said firmly, "because Horizon exists today because of you." The applause that followed wasn't polite. It was thunderous. People who'd refused to shake his hand yesterday now crossed the room to do it first. Tom Harris approached last, his face pale with remorse. "Daniel, I owe you an apology. I was wrong." Daniel shook his hand, his tone gentle. "We all make assumptions, Tom. What matters is what we do once we recognize them." Laughter bubbled through the tension, and for the first time it didn't sound hollow. Later, when the room cleared, Amelia stayed behind with Daniel. Papers were scattered everywhere, but she couldn't stop looking at him. "You've changed this company," she said quietly. "You've changed me." Daniel's expression softened. "You were willing to listen. That's rarer than you think." Her phone buzzed, a message from the merger delegates, confirmed. $1.2 billion partnership approved. She looked at him, smiling through tears. "We did it," he chuckled softly. "No, you did it. I just reminded you what you were capable of." They stepped into the hallway together. Reporters were already gathering outside the glass walls, cameras flashing, executives hugging each other with relief. But the world's eyes weren't on Amelia Grant anymore. They were on the quiet man standing beside her, the man who spoke 9 languages and carried himself like he'd seen every kind of battlefield. That night, the celebration filled the top floor of Horizon Tower. Champagne glasses clinked, laughter echoed against the windows, and Daniel stood by the view of the city, his reflection surrounded by light. He was on the phone, his voice trembling just slightly. "Hey, buddy," he said, smiling. "It's Dad. Yeah, we made it. You can stop worrying about tuition. You're finishing school exactly where you belong." Amelia watched from her office doorway, a warmth spreading through her chest. When he hung up, she asked softly, "That your son?" Daniel nodded, his eyes bright. "He just found out his tuition's paid in full. I told him his old man's back in business," she smiled. "He must be proud." "He is," Daniel said, "but I think he has no idea what really happened here." He turned back to the window. The lights of the city flickered below like 1,000 unspoken stories. "You know," he said quietly, "there's a janitor in that building across the street who used to be a university professor in Kenya. I talk to him every morning when he sweeps the lobby. He speaks 5 languages too." Amelia tilted her head. "You think he's another you?" "I think he's someone nobody's looked at yet." She was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Let's change that." Within months, the Horizon Foundation for Hidden Talent was born. Applications poured in from around the world. Engineers driving cabs, nurses cleaning offices, teachers working in warehouses. Daniel reviewed every name personally. One evening, 6 months later, Amelia walked into his new office on the 30th floor. The walls were lined with thank you letters. He was on another call, his voice calm and clear. "Yes, Mrs. Johnson," he said. "We received Marcus's resume. MIT graduate, right? Don't worry. We'll make sure someone finally gives him a chance." When he hung up, Amelia said, "You still doing this yourself?" Daniel smiled. "One story at a time." They stood together by the window again, the city glowing like a sea of possibility. she said quietly. If I hadn't insulted you that day in the car, he finished for her. We never would have changed anything, Amelia laughed softly. Strange how the worst moments can start the best revolutions. He nodded. People think second chances are about forgiveness, he said. They're really about recognition, seeing what's been in front of you the whole time. Amelia looked at him, the man who had once been invisible. You know, Daniel, when I look at Horizon now, I don't see a company. I see proof. Proof that Worth doesn't wear a title. Daniel smiled, his eyes glimmering. Then I'd say we've done our job. Outside, the wind moved across the glass, carrying the lights of a city filled with untold stories. Somewhere, another driver, another janitor, another forgotten genius was waiting for someone to look closer. And Daniel Brooks knew he would spend the rest of his life making sure the world finally did.